In this tutorial, I am going to do a heart wreath, a mossy heart wreath, and then we're going to paint flowers on it, spring flowers. I was thinking of some violets, and maybe I'll add something else, depends on what I think it needs. Now here's the faux wood background that I had showed in a previous tutorial. I will link to that in the comments. But first I'm going to start, this is all dry by the way, and I'm going to kind of chalk in where I want my heart. And I prefer fatter, wider hearts, so I'm trying to do this at an odd angle. So and maybe it needs to come in more, just so it has, because when you do the moss part, it's really gonna take up some space, and that way you'd have the indentation. Okay, I think that's good enough. Sometimes I overthink it, but just draw a heart to your liking. Or you can even do this as a circle. If you just wanted a circle wreath, then go ahead. You could do this on a square canvas instead of an oblong. I think a square one would really look nice. And so there we go. We've got the basic outline. And I am going to start with, because not all acrylics are very, very opaque, and I want the moss to really stand out and to be bright, I'm going to do an undercoat, a light undercoat of white. This is a scruffy brush, 3/4 inch scruffy plaid 1-stroke. It comes in the value pack that I often link to because I do use them a lot, and it's a very good value for what you get. And they last me. This set I've had for a couple years now, and as long as you take good care of your brushes, they last. And I do have a tutorial on brush care and how I keep mine working so well for so long, and that is also linked in the comments if you care to view it. Okay, making sure my microphone's on. Now I'm going to pounce very lightly, and I've got it a little heavy, so I need to use a light touch because I don't want it overly heavy. I want it to, you see how that's kind of sporadic there, or light, it's not opaque. I just want to give the background for the greens so that they are really bright, because the dark brown kind of sucks up or dulls the color, and I want it to be very, very bright and spring-like. So I'm just twirling my brush as I'm tapping, and I'm trying to only get paint on the, sorry, my paper's making a bunch of noise that covers the table, on the tips, and then I'm trying to bounce just the tips, and it gives it a brighter background to work on. And I think that's good enough. This is a little dark there for me, or a little opaque, but I can add a ribbon there or just go with it. Or I could actually come in and wipe that off with a damp paper towel if it really was that much of a bother. Okay, let me look at it. My heart's still a little wonky, but that's going to give it character. I'm not going to overthink it. And now I'm going to clean this brush, and I'm also going to use this for the greens. Now, when you use this brush, using it damp makes the colors a little muddy. So try to clean it out and dry it as well as you can, or have a second one for your second color, and then this one can air dry while you're doing your other work. I am going to just clean it, dry it really well, and then come back and do the green. All right, this is mostly dried. It's such a light coat that it dries very quickly. And I failed to let you know how I load this brush. I go straight up and down, and I just pounce some in the paint. This is Thicket. All these are Plaid Folk Art multi-surface paints. They're a good consistency, good opacity, and everything I've painted with them has lasted forever. So I really do enjoy using them. Okay, so you see how I double loaded the brush? I've got more of the lighter green than the darker green on here. I'm going to kind of come over here and get some of the paint off. Now I'm going to just pounce on, and I'm going to move my brush around. I'm going to lightly pounce it on. The white's going to show through. I don't want a lot of the dark green. I want this to be a bright green, but it just gives it some contrast. You can also, instead of double loading the brush, you could come in with just a dark green on your brush and lightly tap in just some of the dark green and get that on first, and then come back with the light green and go over the white, go beyond the white that is on here. Now see, I got that a little thick there, but that's okay. I can lighten it up with the lighter green, or if you get too much of one color and you're thinking, oh no, I've gotten it too dark, go back over it with some of the white after it's dried, and you can recover. Everything is fixable. It just takes another layer of paint. So, and with wood, when you paint on wood, you can just sand it off and start over if that's what you want. But on canvas, usually it just, sometimes I'll gesso it over and start from scratch. If there's too much, I wouldn't say layers of paint. I would say like if it has texture from the way you've painted it, use it to do a multimedia piece where you use texture and what have you. I'm working on a tutorial right now on my art journal, and where I'm doing the cover with a textured surface. And I use gesso and molding paste and making it kind of cool. I'm having fun with it. Okay, so there I put the dark green on. Now you could have done this with total double loaded and done it that way, or like this with, you did the undercoat of the dark green. You can see how the white around the edges really makes it pop against the board. Now I'm not even going to go in and clean this brush. This still has the dark green in it. I'm going to go right in the light green. I'm going to tap out a bunch because I want it to be where it just puts down a mossy texture. You see how I'm doing it very light. The dark green shows, the light green shows, and I'm moving and twisting my brush so I'm not getting a pattern, but I'm getting the moss. Now I think I want more moss, or a wider mossy area, so I'm just going to go wider with the light green around the edges and really get that. See that one knot hole in there? I covered it totally up. It might have been better to have that at the bottom down here where it could have still showed, but that's okay. You still see it's a faux wood background. And you want some of the wood to show through. So some of this stuff over here, you don't try to make it opaque. Just keep going until you have the width that you want with your wreath, your heart or circle or whatever it is you're doing. And it doesn't have to be the same size all the way around. It can be a little bit different in some areas. A little bit wider. You know how moss isn't all perfect. And I think, see, my heart's getting a little wonkier, but pull it down a little bit into the camera. So there we have a bunch of the greens. You can step back and see where you want to add more. And if you think you've gotten an area too light, just tap in some darker green. And there is our mossy heart. Now I'm going to let this dry, and we're going to come back and we're going to paint some violets. All right, now that the wreath mossy part, the green, has dried, now I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint the leaves on. You can see my chalk marks. I kind of laid out a little bit of an outline of a design, so I kind of know where I'd want to go. Now I'm double loading. This is a number 12 flat brush. Double loading in the thicket and the, I think it's fresh foliage. It's the same color. Nope, this is citrus green. It's the same color I used on the wreath. Now these are, I'm just going to put in a few leaves because they will be the backdrop to the violets on here. I haven't decided whether or not I want to put ribbon on this. And I do have a full tutorial on how to paint ribbon. So if you wanted to add a ribbon wrapping around, you could. Now here is the leaf. I'm going to do one of my scallop leaves. 1, 2, 3. Get the paint moving. And I wiggle my brush and then let it come to a point. Reload. I don't flip it, the brush, so it's dark against dark. I keep the light against the dark in the center, and that gives it a veining. And you see it kind of was dry there and drug, but because it's green on green, it's not really going to show. And just like the Mossy Wreath, or I should say the, yeah, just like the Mossy Wreath, it's not the star of the show. The star is going to be the violet. So that's really not going to show. But if you wanted to go back over it, you could, and that would smooth out that rough edge. Now a leaf there, and now I'm going to do a leaf here, and it's going to come down off of the wreath. I mean a leaf here, not a wreath here. I don't remember what I said now, but that's okay, you get the gist. And you'll notice I'm not inside of my lines. I'm not worried about being in the lines. Those chalk marks were just kind of an outline to let me see how the design would look, the layout, before I actually committed to paint. I'm going to move this since I can't really move around because of the camera being in my way. So I'm going to move. And anytime you need to move your surface to get a better angle, then go right ahead. You don't have to keep it flat or straight, just whatever angle you need to get the effect you want. Okay, so there's my leaves. I had kind of a vine here. I might pull off a like blossom or something. So I'm going to move this back. Oops, sorry. Hope that didn't hurt your ears. Now there's another leaf up here. I may make that one a little bit smaller, and all I'm going to do is I'm not going to move to a smaller brush. I am just going to give it less pressure and focus on keeping it smaller. This is the main bunch of violets, and the rest are kind of auxiliary. And if I do decide to do some vining, I'll take my smaller, like a liner brush or something. You could do it with this. You see how you just drag it on the chisel edge and create vining. Just get it real light. And there's a couple more over here. A couple more leaves. There's a small bunch of violets on this side to kind of balance out everything. Every time I go away from the camera, I am reloading my brush the same way I started. Each corner, blend. Let me move around to this side. Kind of doing this at an odd angle, but I'm not worried about the leaf being perfect. Just a leaf shape. And if you want to add some small little like slider leaves just to give it some interest, you can. And there you go. So there's our leaves, and you can add or remove. I shouldn't say remove. The less is more. Less is more because you can always add more leaves, but it's hard to take away leaves. You can do it, but it's hard to get it to look right and not look all munched up. So start with the least amount and then add if you think you need more later. Okay, I'm going to let those leaves dry because I don't want the paint to, the green to get into the purple. I want clean color. To get clean color, you'll need it dry enough that it doesn't pull into your next color. So we'll let it dry. I'm going to hasten it by getting my blow dryer and blowing on it. And then I'll be back and we will start on the violets. Now let's paint the violets. I am using what's called Perfect Purple and the number 8 flat plaid one-stroke brush. And I'm just loading it with the paint. Now the violets, these kind of violets, dog violets, wild violets, they're kind of different. They have 2 petals that kind of come from the top. So I'm just pressing, lifting, coming to a point. Let's say this is the point I'm coming to. And then the same, and they're kind of more upwards like that. And then they have ones coming from down here. So it almost looks like you've made an X with the strokes. And then the middle one kind of comes in like that. And it overlaps these 2 on the bottom. And then I'll do another one over here. Now, not all of them are perfectly like this. Some of them, the side ones are a little more perpendicular to it. But that's basically how these work. Now you notice how these, I kind of do a little bit of a, I start on the chisel edge, but I'm kind of at an angle before coming down. And then the very middle one here, I'm on the flat of the brush. Okay, I'm going to do one more of these darker purple. And I'm just doing kind of an X shape. And then I put the middle one in like that. And that's the dark purple. And I'm going to, I rinse out my brush. And I'm going to come in with a little bit lighter purple, or you can even do this with a creamy white, because I'm looking at pictures and the center has kind of a creamy white, but I'm just going to get a little bit on the corner of my brush and bring that in. And you notice that's not completely opaque. If you want it completely opaque, you can go in with the second coat after the first coat has dried, which is not a bad idea. And I'm just looking at my picture, and it's kind of got this lighter color coming out from the center here. Kind of almost a highlight area. I'm not being too precise. You can get like a floating, not a floating medium, a blending gel or blending medium to add to your brush, or a little bit water to thin this out if you have struggle with it. But so I've kind of put the light in there. The lighter purple, which is light lavender, or you can just add white to your Perfect Purple to get a little bit lighter color. Now I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going in with just my lavender on my brush. I rinsed it, tapped it dry, and now I'm just loading it. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to go over top with making some lighter lavender violets. And yes, I'm going to overlap some of the darker purple. Now, some of them, like this, it's not really showing that that's a separate petal. So I might, let's see. And I'm going to do this one. These ones thinner, and then come up with that. And yes, I am overlapping. So now with the lighter lavender, I might see the greenish showing through. I'll let it dry and I'll come back through and over paint it a second coat. And here's a gap here, so I'm going to put another one right here on this leaf. I'm rinsing my brush. I'm going to move up here. So I'm going to zoom out. And I'm moving to this one up here. Get it down here. Make sure you're in. Okay, I added some more violets up here. And then violets here, the same way I did these. These ones I haven't put the centers in where it's lighter because I wanted to come back and go over it. Looks like it might be dry enough for me to do a second coat. Now these over here, let me bring them into the camera. Zoom in a little bit. You'll notice they're kind of a bicolor. And that, how I did that was I didn't clean out my brush. I had the light lavender in my brush. And then I loaded some of the darker lavender and I let them streak and blend right there. So when I did those petals, I had two colors on my brush. And that works too. So let me zoom back out. Now here I am going to go over the lavender to make it more opaque because the dark came through. Sometimes I do undercoat. I will undercoat with a lighter color if I want the vibrancy to be there. But I did not do that. So I'm going to go over it with a second coat because I do want the opacity on these light lavender violets. So I'm just going over. I'm not perfectly covering the top layer, or the bottom layer, sorry. First layer. I'm just kind of going over it and making parts of it opaque. And the same with here. I reload. And there I have those double coated. And the centers of these I'm going to make a little darker instead of lighter, because some of them do have a darker area in the center, or you can just go with what you like, you know. But I'm dabbing the corner in this, in the a darker purple, and I'm just coming in and streaking it into the middle. And the paint is still wet, so it's just blending in. Or if you aren't secure of using the number 8 brush, get a liner brush. This is a very tiny liner brush. This is a Low Cornell 10-0 liner, and you can tell it's bent and everything, so this thing's well used, but it'll do the job. And I'm just loading it in here and pulling it out to a point, so you have a point on the brush, and then you can just drag from the middle and you can get the little streaks. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just get a hint of color in there. Coming out, radiating out on the petals from the center. And there you go. I can do this one up here. Do all of them that you want. That way. I know I'm out of the camera, so I'll quit doing that. All right, so I've got that done. And since I just recoated that, and it's still wet, to do the center, I'll try it. Let's see. Sometimes you need to let it dry, and sometimes you can go with it. I'm going to use the same liner brush. This is a very small liner, or you can also use the corner of your number 8 brush like I did before. And I'm just going to make a little upside down V, so it kind of is giving you a center point. And I'll even do it on these ones. Might be a little too bright on the darker purple, so I'll just go into a lighter purple. I'll use the lighter lavender on those rather than the white. Yeah, the white was just too stark. And this one's kind of behind there, so you don't really need to see it. And let's see, oh, the buds. Let me get my number 8 brush, and I'll show you how I did the buds. I'm loading with the lavender. My perfect purple has dried mostly, so I'm going to get a little bit more out. Now these are going to be the little buds that are going to be hanging down here, and maybe one up here. I have the perfect purple in my brush, and I'm going to dip my corner just very barely, and then just kind of blend it out on the palette. And I'm going to just make 2 little chisel strokes here. Make a little bit of the dark purple come from where the vine attaches to it. So it's like a little shadowing there. And then I will get some greens, the same greens. Try to stick to the same colors unless you really want it to stand out differently, but I usually like it to just kind of meld and blend together well. So I'm going to try this. It might be too much. This number 8 brush really does have a good chisel edge. So I'm double loading both colors in it. And then I'm just going to touch and then drag a chisel edge. Touch twice, so it kind of makes a little leaf edge, and then drag. Now if it wasn't tone on tone, meaning green on green, that might seem a little thick. So it would be better probably to do it with the liner brush. And let's see, let's do some vining, little tendrils. And so get your liner brush, it's got a little bit of water in it, and get some of the greens and make the paint nice and inky. Pull the brush to a point and then create these little tendrils coming off and curlicuing around. And also you can make the stems to the violets. They kind of go up, around, and behind themselves. Up and behind themselves. So you almost like making an upside down U and letting it just go behind the violet. So again, go back to the vining or the curlicues. That just adds a little daintiness. That one didn't really show. All right. So that is basically how you do the violets, and these 2 sets of violets will be finished the same way. And adding some tendrils, and this I'll add the base to that bud, and here's this one, and then you just vine it down. Let me get some more water. I need to make it inky to make some tendrils, little curlicues. I admit I'm not really good at curlicues, but practice doesn't hurt. So I'll come in and I need to add more violets on top of that one. Well, I guess I can do it with you instead of ending here. Let me add, I'm just going to go the straight, since I had some of the dark purple in there, I'm going to go into the straight light lavender and make the violets on top with that. I'm kind of at it on angle here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I'm at such an odd angle, I'm getting kind of sloppy with it. And let's just do one right on top of these others. I didn't have any of the other dark purple on it, so I'll add that right there. The base of where the leaf will attach, and it would be a little bit darker there. And so that's pretty good there. Do another bud thing here. Looks good. I'm going to come back with my liner and the dark purple. And put that in. You see it really does need to be gone over because the green's showing through, but I'm not going to sweat it this time. These are still wet and a little bit drier, and it would go better on there. Now the other ones could use some dark centers added too. Some little, got a little thick on here. And now on those darker ones, I will just add the little upside down V. And I'll do that upside down V, kind of try to be lighter touch. You see it's not dry enough. You see how it just kind of streaks on. If you want to, a lot of times there's a speck of yellow in the center. Let me see, I've got a yellow here. Let me see, what have I got? Sunflower. Just a tiny dot will give that little spark. So let me see if it'll, yeah, it will. It'll dab on there. Now the best thing I can say at this point would be for me to step back, walk away, and come back and see what it needs. I still need to